love sharing recipes that are perfect for an at-home date night. You could do these anytime, but it's just maybe something special. There's an entree, dessert, and a drink. I'm prepping the veggies first, so I'm gonna go ahead and prep the ingredients I have to cut for dinner. It's earlier in the day, and then I'm also gonna get started on a dessert pretty soon. But I love a good stir fry, and for dinner I'm making beef and broccoli. It was really good, by the way, but to get started, I am gonna go ahead and prep the broccoli. So I just washed it and I'm cutting it into chunks. So I didn't want the pieces to be too big or too small. I wanted them to keep their shape, but also be a little bit soft with just a tiny bit of firmness. I don't like my vegetables to have a lot of like hard texture. So prepped that up and then I moved on to the steak. So I used flank steak. You could also just use like prepared shaved steak. You can get that from Trader Joe's, but I liked this. It was really good. So I cut it in half with the grain, and then against the grain, I cut it in really thin strips. And I tried to do them all pretty uniform so they would cook all at, the same time, and one piece wouldn't take longer than another or anything like that. Since I was doing it earlier in the day, I did go ahead and put it in a Ziploc bag to put in my fridge. But, you don't have to do that if you're cooking it up right away. Next, we're moving on to one of my favorite desserts that's just super, super easy, Rice Krispie treats. And I decided to make it a little bit festive and fun with some freeze-dried strawberries. So I went ahead and crushed them up with a rolling pin and put them in a bowl. I left some pieces big and some pieces really fine. I'm getting ready to make Rice Krispie treats. I think the key to making good Rice Krispie treats is having everything ready to go. So since it's for kind of like a date night at home, it's close to Valentine's Day, I'm doing freeze-dried strawberries to make them pink, hopefully. And I kind of crushed it into powder, rolled it into powder. Some I just crushed with my fingers to make larger pieces. And then we have all of the rest of the ingredients here. So I'm gonna get started on cooking these up now. Moving over to the stove, this is a very quick process. I'm adding in a stick of butter. I'm gonna let that melt. And you can brown the butter if you want, or just slightly brown it, or just let it melt. And then once it's melted to your liking, I'm going to go ahead and add marshmallows. So you need a bag plus a little bit more. So I make sure to measure that ahead of time. And I think the key is you don't overcook your marshmallows. Otherwise, it can be kind of tough and you don't get that kind of like gooey, just kind of pull apart, very good texture of a Rice Krispie treat. So once the marshmallow is melted, most of the way I'm adding in salt, vanilla, and the freeze-dried strawberries and the Rice Krispies. I also forgot to mention that once the marshmallows melted, I turned off the heat. You don't want to have the heat on at this point. But I fully mixed it. The strawberries never like fully combined to dye it pink or anything. It just gave little strawberry specks in there, which was really good. I added in extra marshmallows. That way you can kind of have like a full little mini marshmallow in every bite. I do a parchment lined baking tray, but you don't have to. It doesn't ever really like stick. I even just cut it in the baking dish and it's totally fine. I also press down on the Rice Krispie treats so that way they'll stick together in the pieces that you cut. So I use the back of a spoon. I have, if it's too sticky for the spoon, used my hand or even like the bottom of a glass, and that works well too. And that's it. They're ready. I just set them aside until they fully cool, so it takes about an hour, and I cut them. I think the ideal Rice Krispie treat is one that's soft, a little gooey, but holds its shape well. I don't like a hard Rice Krispie treat. So these are really good. The strawberries added kind of like a tartness to it since the Rice Krispie treats are really sweet. Now I'm going to get started on the sauce. So this is hot water that I just went ahead and heated up in the microwave. I'm going to add in some ginger. This is garlic, and I only have ground ginger and ground garlic. So that is what I'm using. This is tamari. You could use soy sauce instead. I just prefer tamari. So I'm gonna do 6 tablespoons of that. Putting in some brown sugar. I'm also gonna add in some cornstarch and sesame oil. I don't know if I have enough. I'm just gonna add what I have left in this container. It's supposed to be 2 tablespoons. That's not even 1 tablespoon. I'll see if I have more, but I'm not sure if I do. I don't have more, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. And then I'm gonna add in some black pepper. All right, so I'm just gonna stir it so that the sugar should dissolve in the water since the water was hot. I'll set this aside and we'll get started over at the stove. If you're cooking rice, you'd also want to get that started at this point. I'm just using microwave rice. I'm gonna add in about a tablespoon of oil. The oil has heated up a little bit. I'm gonna add in the broccoli. And I'm gonna stir it every minute or two. But I'm also just going to partially cover it with a lid. Actually, I think I'll fully cover it with a lid just for a couple of minutes, and then I'll see how it looks. I like my broccoli a little bit softer with just a tiny bit of bite to it. It's been a couple of minutes. I'm gonna see how it's looking. I think I'll add about maybe a tablespoon of water just so this broccoli gets a little bit softer. Let's check on it now. Yeah, to me, I think this looks good. It's bright green. It looks like it's a bit softer, but it's not soft yet, which is good. I'm gonna go ahead and take this out. Let's add in a little bit more oil. And now I'm gonna go ahead and add in the beef. I have the heat on high, and I want it to be all in a single layer. Probably should have made sure the oil was all over the pan, but that's okay. And I'm gonna cook it for 2 minutes aside, and I'll probably have to do at least 2 batches, maybe 3. I'm gonna flip it. I'm gonna start with the side that I put on first, and then go to the side that I put on last. I'm gonna take it off and put it in the same dish as my broccoli. I did do 3 batches of the meat in the pan because I didn't want to overcrowd it. At this point, all the meat is cooked. I'm gonna go ahead and add in the sauce and we'll thicken that up. I did turn the heat down as well. That's gonna thicken up like right away. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and add back in the beef and the broccoli. And I'm just gonna stir it all together, cook it for just a couple more minutes. Taste it to see if I think it needs any more flavor, any more seasoning. One thing I will say is I do like things pretty saucy, so I think I would probably double the sauce next time. I think I could definitely use a lot more sauce. I'm gonna add a little water. Not only did I want a little bit more of the sauce, but I also wanted more flavor. So I added more tamari, more garlic, ginger, pepper, and then I thought the seasoning came together really well. I just thought it was a bit bland before I added the additional seasonings. And again, if I made this all over again, I would double everything. I wouldn't double the water, but I would double all the rest of the sauce ingredients. I also would make sure that I have enough sesame oil. I do think that would add a really nice punch of flavor, and since I didn't have quite enough, I just think it was missing a little bit of that sesame flavor. So I would definitely add the full amount of that next time as well. Although I would make changes, and I did make changes, we loved this. It was very filling, full of flavor. It was really nice to just do like a nice dinner at home instead of going out. But it was a really good recipe. It was delicious, pretty easy, and we loved it. I love hot chocolate, and I've been making a homemade hot chocolate mix for, I think I've made it 3 other times. It's really delicious, so I thought I'd start making that right now. I'm almost out. This hot chocolate recipe is so perfect, and I thought I would include it in this video because it's just a nice kind of a light, sweet, warm drink to have after dinner. So I will leave the recipe in the description below, but it's super easy. I take 1.5 tablespoons to 8 ounces of milk, and that's the hot chocolate that I make. You could add, whipped cream on top if you'd like as well. Now let's make the mix. I think the key to a good hot chocolate is a high quality cocoa powder. So my parents bought me this when they went out of town. I also have this that is really good. I've tried a couple other ones. They're not as chocolatey. You really want to get a good quality cocoa powder so it has a good chocolate flavor. This recipe could not be any simpler. So to a blender, or this is a blender cup, I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of cocoa powder. It's unsweetened. 3/4 of a cup of sugar plus an additional tablespoon of sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a dash of cinnamon, and that's it. I go ahead and blend it up because I want a finer powder consistency, more like what you get with a store-bought hot chocolate, just a really fine powder. But I go ahead and store it. I just store it in an old like coffee jar. This is from Trader Joe's, but use whatever kind of, mason jar or any kind of jar you have. And I also stored a little bit in a bowl. I didn't have space in the jar, but I love it. I think this is the 4th or 5th time I've made this recipe, and it's just a really great creamy hot chocolate. It is really chocolatey, not too sweet, so if you want a sweeter hot chocolate, add more sugar to the mix. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I loved sharing these recipes, and I'll see you again next week. Bye!